Hello and welcome to this BSI webinar, Benchmark Certification Update, Understanding the New Process and Requirements. Our panelists today are Nathan Shipley, Certification Technical Expert, and Holly Rowland, Global Head of Certification. We welcome your question, and you can ask questions throughout the webinar through your question box in the control panel. There will be also a Q&A session near the end of the webinar. Thank you for your participation. I will now hand over to Holly, who will be moderating today's panel.
Hello and welcome. If we go to the first slide, please. So we'd like to take you through the agenda today. So we're going to go through the overview of the changes and what's happened in the world of benchmark. We'll run through meetings and an overview of the process and the ongoing requirements of the 5-year review. And then towards the end, we'll also talk about the pricing structures before going through some questions. So if I go to the next slide, please. Myself, so I'm Holly Rowland, the Global Head of Certification. So I look after shaping and overseeing certification at BSI around product certification. And what does that mean around delivery worldwide and how we partner with organisations. My colleague Nathan, who's going to take you through the technical side and the changes for benchmark, is a technical expert who's been here for a number of years. And he looks after how product assessment, scheme requirements and compliance guidance work. And he's going to go through this in much more detail. If we could go to the next slide, please. So before we get into the technical detail, we'd like to talk a little bit about what it does mean to be part of the benchmark scheme and what we, BSI, help our clients to do. So there's the legislative and regulatory requirements, and that goes across a broad spectrum of items. So it could be things like kite marks, it could be CE, it could be other regulations. It helps people fulfill supply chains and specify our expectations. We help companies, demonstrate compliance and due diligence. And then a big part of that is how we drive continual improvement and look at new product development. A larger part of the scheme is around how we help you access new markets. And market access is one of the key things that will run through what we talk about today. And the other part is how we can then help you in terms of contracts and get competitive advantage. If we could go to the next slide. So looking at how we can help around the world and all the different areas that we operate in, you'll see there are a number of access marks that we help facilitate. So a big part of that market access piece is how we, BSI, are trying to help our clients become as part of our one-stop shop around testing and certification. So where you want to export your products, we can help facilitate that, not just across using benchmark in Australasia and the Asian markets, but how we can also help support and align across other regulatory requirements, such as CE marking for Europe. We can talk about UKCA for the UK. We can talk about SANAS for South Africa, for example, and we can talk about how we support as well across the Middle East. So benchmark sits within that framework, and you can see big part of the changes in the scheme are how we then help align your clients that are sitting within the benchmark scheme to be in line with all of those other requirements, so we can help with market access globally. Next slide, please. So thinking about how we've globalised benchmark, at this point I'm going to pass over to Nathan, and he's going to take through the technical detail and where all the changes have happened and what they've happened for and why.
Thanks a lot, Holly. Thanks a lot, Martina. Thanks for the great introductions and the overview and setting the scene. As Holly and Martina sort of introduced, I'm Nathan Shipley. I just checked on the people that are attending. There's some good familiar names there, so hope you enjoy the webinar and find it informative. So as many of you have been benchmark customers for a number of years, will have noticed that there have been some changes that have been taking place, certainly over the last two, where BSI has gone through a process of globalizing the benchmark scheme. The purpose of this is that we've primarily been looking at the way, or JASANs have been looking the way that they implement their Type 5 certification schemes that they accredit. Now, for those that aren't familiar with JASANs is an equivalent in Australia of UCAS or RVA. and they are the body that issues accreditation for certification schemes, testing schemes, those types of things. And JASANS accredits our benchmark scheme to the standard ISO 17065, which is also the standard that we operate to for kite marking, CE marking, and UKCA marking. So JASANS have been looking at the way that they've been implementing their accreditation of Type 5 schemes, and that's made us have some changes and look at the way that we've been managing the benchmark scheme and bringing it in line with the Type 5 requirements of ISO 17065. This means that BSI can align the benchmark scheme with other Type 5 schemes that we do operate. So that'll be things such as the BSI kite mark and other things as well, such as CE marking, certainly under Module Ds or Module Hs, and bring it in line with other certification schemes that we operate. When the benchmark scheme did first start off, and we purchased benchmark back in 2006, the predominance of the client base that we had were Australasian, so it was very much a domestic market, being serving a domestic clients. Since that time, the number of countries where clients have been based for benchmark has exploded exponentially, and we now have bases across mainland Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas that are using benchmark as a certification scheme for market access into the Australasia. So these changes are bringing it into structure and into the structure that the rest of the BSI product certification schemes run. And as I can see in some of the names that are in the attendee list this afternoon, they are, some of you manufacturers also use BSI for things like PPE regulation, Module Ds, kite marks, those types of things. So we'll start using the same sort of language and processes that we operate for those schemes. So that should bring into a little bit more familiarization into the way that we operate those schemes out. Now, those that were involved in benchmark in the past have maybe familiar with, working with 3 or 4 specific individuals who did literally everything, and that was from conducting assessments to certification recommendations and even issuing out those certificates. Under this globalization, what we're looking to do is promote the use of local delivery. So we have an army of assessors globally who deliver all types of QMS type assessments. So the idea is that we utilize those people to deliver benchmark assessments that will give better value for the day rates that get passed on to you as customers, and also has the added advantage of reducing our carbon footprint, because instead of sending people to Sydney Airport and then flying around the world, we're using people that can deliver those assessments within the country in local languages and those types of things. One of the other spin-offs that we're looking to implement as well is the use of multiple assessments. So if you do have a kite mark license or a Module D license, then the idea is that we can continue those assessments and combine those with benchmarks. Now we are looking at the way that we can implement this a little bit more efficiently and more effectively, but the idea is that we can combine those assessments, so we would have one assessor on site delivering, as I say, kite mark, CE marking and benchmark under the one assessment report, which will again save you time and costs with those implementations. We'll go for the next slide, please. Okay, so as I said, we have created a specific pod. These guys are working under me for certainly the first half of next year, possibly the second half, whilst we carry out the workload that has built up, and also transitioning a lot of the expired certificates through their first expiration cycle. Now the team is based globally. We have a lady called Krishna Patel, who's based in the UK. She's working with me to ensure that the people within the team have got a good workload, managing clients' responses, those types of things, and basically acting as a coordinator for the technical team that have been put in place to cover this. We also have a lady called Funda Olmes. She's based in Germany. Funda has been a member of the PPE team for a number of years, and is specialised in things such as footwear, those types of product types, and carries out certification recommendations. We've also got a gentleman called Asanka Sandakalam. He's based in Malaysia. He's new to the product certification BSI benchmark fold. He's been with us for about 4 months now, but previously he used to work for BSI Regulatory Services and has a vast experience in gloves, hand protection, those types of things, and has worked in a number of different glove manufacturers. So we're welcoming Asanka into the team. Noor Amy Mohd Nazir. Amy, as she's known, is also based in Malaysia. She's new to the team, and she's been involved with BSI for just over 2 months now. We've also got Amit Bhujbal, based in India. Amit's been with BSI for just over 2 years now, and as I say, he's come from another notified body based in India, who's managed PPE products and has been with the PPE team for just over 2 years. And then we also have a gentleman called Sean Lee, based in Melbourne, Australia. Sean has been managing the scheme on a local level for just over 2 years now. And we also have a gentleman called Kieran Baggett, who's part of our commercial team. He was in our webinar this morning, giving some of the speaking parts. He's based in Melbourne, so understandably isn't here for this afternoon session. Okay, next slide, please. And one thing that we have heard is that some of our competitors have been saying that we're looking to wind down the benchmark scheme. That is a complete fabrication. We are actually looking to expand it. We are incorporating it more into the global scheme, and we certainly are investing in people, time and resources to make it into a global organisation. This is coming in from a number of different methods. For example, the certification managers. We have a dedicated team of 6 certification managers based predominantly in the Asia Pac region, as you can see from where they were based before. We've got a little pod going in Malaysia. We also have another lady called Hamal, who's based there looking after the construction products side as well. So they're in an appropriate time zone for people that are based within the Australasian area. We're also in the process of training up assessors locally. So we have a global pool of around about 63 assessors that can deliver assessments locally in local language. And these assessors are based in Asia, the Middle East, Europe, Africa, and the Americas. So the idea is, as I say, we can pass on those reduced day rates, and we'll come on to the pricing a little bit later as a benefit to you guys. And it also reduces, as I say, things like carbon footprints, and also allows locally tongued assessors to be able to deliver assessments, which hopefully make them go easier and more efficiently. We also have a dedicated management team. So I say we've got Kieran Baggett, who's looking after the commercial tide over in Melbourne. You've got myself, who's based just north of London, and looking after the technical aspects of the team. So we are really throwing full dedication into this to make sure that the benchmark scheme can be globalized, can utilize other services that we operate from BSI, and also is effective and efficient going forwards. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so as part of the integration into the global schemes, we are changing some of the terminology that we've been using, and up on the slide deck is some of the terms that we're using that are new to the BSI benchmark process. So we have license holders. These are the primary certificates that have been issued, and these are the legal entities with the responsibility for product listed on that certificate in the marketplace. So whereas if you're used to CE speak, these will be deemed as like the manufacturer taking responsibility for the process. In benchmark world, we're calling these license holders, and we will have primary license holders who take full IP responsibility for the products that are being certified. We also have supplier license holders or own brand labels. These are where the product that's being manufactured by the license holder is being made in the name of a supplier license. So effectively the product is identical, and I certainly know that in my world of personal protective equipment, this is a very common, certainly within the fields of eyewear and mask production. So the product effectively is in the name of the supplier, but the IP for that product is being held by the license holder. So it does follow a very similar process to that of the own brand labeling that a number of you are familiar with. Manufacturers are the people that actually put nuts and bolts together or sew garments together and physically make the product. So the manufacturer in the world of benchmark is the organization that physically makes that product. So the scope of certification is the list of products and the listing of legal owners of responsibility of that product, and that product is specified on the certificate that's been issued by BSI. We're also putting definitions of manufacturing facilities. So this is specifically a factory or production plant that's being used to physically make that product. So a manufacturer who's making product may have multiple manufacturing facilities, but we're identifying those manufacturing facilities within the scope of the certification that we're going to be granting. We also have accreditation. So this is the procedure by which an authoritative body, in this case JASANS, gives formal recognition for the competence of us, BSI, as a certification body managing the benchmark schemes. Now, all these terminologies have been listed in a BSI document called PP 169. This is in the public domain. We're going through a process of just doing some final iterations on that one, and that document will be going out for public comment very soon. So we'll be passing that out so you can have a look in, and it will be publicly available for you to look at those terminologies and processes by which we operate by. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to be looking at a number of different processes by which we're operating the benchmark scheme. So the first one that we're going to be looking at is extensions to scope, where we're adding new products. So if the product certificate has been issued and you're adding the same types of products but different model numbers to that certificate, then this is the process by which we would follow. So the first point of call will be speaking to either to your certification manager or your salesperson or your key account manager, and having those initial discussions there where we would be getting into some sort of engagement with regards to what the product range would be, establish what things like the manufacturing processes are going to be, the company structure, and from that we would provide a quotation to you and offer you some form of commercial offer for that as a project. If you then accept that quotation, it then comes back to us, and then we'll go through the planning stage of being able to agree dates for things like testing, defining what samples are, and coming up with a test plan that we can then propose to you and arrange times when that those products can be tested. We'll also be looking at an evaluation process, so that'll be from my team within the product certification side. So what you would do is submit a technical file, and we'll go through in some detail as to what the technical file covers. We'd verify the test program that's been undertaken. and any non-conformities that's been raised from those have been addressed. We'll also issue you with some form of draft certificate to ensure you're happy with the scope of that certification. And then once that's been agreed, we'll send that on to our compliance and risk. They will do a final decision and get the certificate updated. Now, that two-stage process is critical in our ISO 17065 processes and is key to having a separate decision maker who's independent and impartial from the recommendation that's been made by one person that you'll be having lots of communications with. So that's the overall scope for adding products to an existing benchmark certificate. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so if you're having a new process, so this could be either you're changing processes within a factory or you're establishing a new location for products to be made by. Again, this would start off with an initial conversation either with your certification manager, your sales representative, or key accounts manager, whoever have your regular contacts with. What we would do is we would look at the product range that's been affected by the changes, and then we would establish what the manufacturing process is going to be, and again have a look at things like company structures, how many employees, and based on that we would then provide you with some form of company commercial offering. We then have a look at any testing that may need to be involved. So because we're changing the location, we'd have a look to see whether any limited testing needs to be undertaken just to ensure that the product has been maintained, the quality and the classification levels are remaining the same. And then at a similar sort of time, we'll carry out an initial assessment of that new manufacturing location and look at the effectiveness of the documented quality control system to make sure that it's compliant and able to produce product and issue out an assessment report. Following that side, we would then do the similar sort of evaluation process where we would look at the assessment side as well as any testing data that would need to be reviewed, and your certification manager will come up with a process where we would issue out a draft which will then go through decision and issue out a certificate to cover those that change in location. We then remove on to some form of ongoing surveillance, and so we will carry out surveillance audits to make sure that the process and the quality system is still being maintained and that any processes involved still manufacture a product to the same level of quality that are initially approved. So this will be the process that we'll follow for any process changes and follow it from that way. So next slide, please. The third side would be again looking at changes in manufacturing. So again, this just sort of summarizes the processes again, where we would have a look, carry out an internal audit, carry out a review of all the processes to make sure that the product compliance is still being maintained, and then we'll go on to the ongoing surveillance program, and I'll put that through to you in more detail later on. Okay, do you want to go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this kind of gives you a flow chart that we would be following. So the application stage is a reflection of those initial conversations that we'll be having, scoping out the project. We'd then go into a planning phase where we would be reviewing documents, planning, raising test plans, communicating to those to you as a customer. We then carry out the doing phase as far as we'll be concerned from a certification body. So that'll be product testing of the samples that have been submitted, factory assessments. And once those have been completed and any non-conformities being closed down, we then go into the evaluation side, which will be conducted by my team. We would then make sure that the product complies with the relevant standards that we're certifying it to, and that any non-conformities that have been raised through the assessment have been closed down. That would then result in BSI issuing you out a benchmark certificate, and that will go to you, enabling you to place product onto the market. Now, that probably sounds quite familiar for any of you who have certainly gone through CE marking, whether it's to the PPE regulations, CPR or GAR sort of type processes, or even to the kite marking, in that we have a look at the testing of product, the evaluation of a quality system, and then issuing of some form of certification to confirm that. Once those activities have been completed, we then go on to the ongoing activities, and that would include annual surveillance visits and also some form of review of that certification at the end of its expiration, which would be a 5-year period for BSI benchmark certificates. Okay, do you want to go to the next slide, please? Okay, so the ongoing surveillance aspects of the visits that we look by break down into 2 key areas. So the first one we're going to look at is the annual assessment visits. So as I say, we've got 63 assessors that are based globally, because of the lion's share of sites that we visit are in Asia Pacific. We've got a high number that are based in China, Asia Pacific areas such as Malaysia, Thailand, and so forth. So the idea is that we can deliver those assessments locally, so we can pass over those cost savings to you and charge a reduced day rate compared with what has happened previously under the benchmark scheme. We're also looking to combine the benchmark assessments with other similar types of product certification visits that take place on those sites. So if there is a kite marking that's been taken place at those locations, or CE marking, then we would look to combine those assessments, so one assessment can conduct multiple different types of certifications that are available there. One of the changes that we will be looking to implement is that on occasions we have been finding that head offices haven't been visited as part of the certification process. So what we will be looking to do is involving a head office surveillance visit at least once within the 5-year cycle, and also a visit to all the manufacturing locations. So this isn't something that we're just sort of implementing as a BSI whim type thing. This is something that we're looking at under our ISO 17065 requirements, and this is something that's been stipulated so that we have a level of confidence that the products and the locations that have been certified are still being maintained and still functioning in a means that can offer the product to be manufactured in a form that is compliant. Moving on to the 5-year certification reviews, this is going to be similar to the 5-year CE certificate reviews, or also the kite mark recertification reviews that we undertake. So what we're going to be looking is to ensure that any technical documentation and certificates consistently meet the ISO 17065 requirements. And so we'll be having a look at those, make sure there's no changes in the requirements for those products to be certified, and any certification is still being maintained correctly. We'll be looking to make sure that there's no outstanding non-conformities for any of the factory or head office visits, and also that the durations are appropriate and correct for the manufacturing sites that are being listed. So if there is a reduction in the amount of output, and currently it's having, say, 2 person days assessments there, we may reduce that down to 1, or if there's been an increase in the amount of production that's being made, then we may increase the number of days accordingly. So the idea is just to make sure that any assessment days are pertinent and relevant to the actual output that are being taken place there. One of the other things as well is that we'll be looking to make sure that any certifications are issued to the latest standard. So this is the to the current state of the art. Now, there isn't a official journal or designated standard list for Australasian products being entered into the Australasian market. But we will be looking to make sure that the latest standard is adhered to and those products are being met by the products that have been issued there. And this is all geared up to help you as a license holder to demonstrate your due diligence if ever challenged by market surveillance authorities. So we're, one thing certainly post-COVID, we're finding that market surveillance authorities are very heavily scrutinising whether product does comply, and just having this sanity check once every 5 years when the certificate expires gives us a chance just to have a reset and make sure that everything is appropriate and nothing is outstanding, and that we can ask, we are got full confidence in any certification we've issued as a certification body. Okay, do you want to go on to the next slide, please? Okay, so as I was saying, there were a number of different activities that take place on the assessment visits. So we do have a form that's used to guide the assessor as part of their assessment visits, and this is covered on a BSI document, a PP 1997. It's very similar to the type of product certification assessments that you may have if you use BSI for other types of certifications. So it'll be similar to like PPE Module D or kite marking assessments. So there's no real great surprises there, and it should all be the type of things that you would be expecting for any type of quality system assessment, whether it's ISO 9001 or ISO 13485. So we'll be looking at things like the operational system or the quality plan. We'll be looking at the organisational charts and job descriptions within the manufacturing processes. We'll be looking to make sure that any key documents that are being used are controlled and record keeping is up to date, so that you have a log of any inline inspections or pre-inspections prior to dispatch. We'd look for any purchasing processes that are involved to make sure that they're in process and that anybody that supplies you with materials have gone through some form of checks and balances. We'd also look at any customer supplies if that's pertinent to the processes that you employ. We would look at things such as the critical components for the product, any specifications that are being used for inline tests or final test inspection. We'll be looking at labelling to make sure it complies with both the standards and any benchmark logos are appropriately being used. And also that any manufacturing processes and inspection processes. We'd also be looking for things like identification and traceability. We'd look for inspection, test and calibration to make sure that that's traceable to some form of national standards. And we'd also be looking for some sort of final product release. So that's how you, within your internal controls, make sure that the products comply with the standard that they've been typically examined against. So there's nothing really there that's really any kind of culture shock. It's all the kind of good standard stuff that should be employed in any manufacturing process, and the kind of things that will be looked at as part of a 9001 CE marking or a kite marking type product certification assessment. So there should be no real surprises there from many perspectives from that side. Okay, do you want to give us the next slide, please? Okay, so what we're going to look at now is benchmark technical documentation. So we've got two documents here that are more than available in the public domain, that being the application form and also the technical file checklist. Okay, and the first one we're going to look at on the next slide is the application form. Okay, so we have an application form which does look and feel very much like application forms that BSI uses for other certifications, and it's classed as a PF 3009. Basically, this covers as much information as is needed for us to provide you pretty well much with a quotation. So that covers things such as who the certificate holder's address is going to be. It allows you to define where the manufacturing locations are going to be. It gives you the opportunity to list things such as model names and types of products that you want to have certified. It gives you the ability to list down things such as the standards that the product is going to comply with, and also gives you the opportunity to list down any management standards that you currently have in place. So that could be things like, you know, to say Module D certifications, Module H certifications to new approach directives, kite mark, ISO 9001, ISO 13485, those types of things. So it basically gives us all the information that we need to know, and from the basis of what's contained with this in this application form, it gives us the opportunity to provide you with a quotation, ask any questions if we have it, create any test plans, that kind of thing. We are creating kind of like a secondary application form, which is in process at the moment for the 5-year reviews. And this just asks you some additional questions, like have there been any changes to the product or process prior to the initial certification being issued. Okay, so do you want to go on to the next slide, please? Right, so we also have a technical file checklist. So this is the PF 1948, and this specifies what's needed within a BSI benchmark technical file, and it pretty well much does have the same look and feel of other similar types of technical files that we ask for manufacturers for kite marking or CE marking or UKCA marking. And again, it should be the sort of information that you should have to hand. There's no sort of weird and wonderful things that we're looking at here to catch you out. It's all relatively straightforward. So we're looking at things like a contents page, covering where things are within the technical file. The technical file should be a control type document, so it should have some form of revision history. So if you do updates to cover design changes or process changes, that needs to be documented as to when they've been introduced and when they've been signed off. We'd also be looking to have a product description in there. So this would be a description of what the product or the model is and its intended use. So it gives you the ability to kind of benchmark what the product should be, what it should do, and any standards that it should comply with. And also if that standard gives you different levels of classification or that type of thing, that can be specified within the product description. We'd also be looking for some form of drawings to identify what the product is. So that would be some form of control drawings, schematics of the product, components, sub-assemblies and circuits as applicable. We'd also be looking for list of components. So that would be a complete bills of materials. And we'd also be looking for there things such as grades or types of materials that have been used for that material. So my background predominantly is personal protective equipment. So if we were making the liner for an equestrian helmet, we'll be looking for the density of the polystyrene that's been used as a shell liner. We'll be looking at the filter media, the density of that in grams per meter squared, or you know, if we were looking at the carbon, the type of carbon that's been used in gas filtering filters. So it's the bits that really do make the product work from a performance perspective. We'll be looking at the types or grades of materials that have been used in those instances. We'd also be looking for test reports. So we'll be looking at copies of test reports demonstrating compliance with the relevant standard that we're looking to certify to. We're looking at technical specifications that all materials and variants have been covered, and we are putting in some parameters in place in that test reports should come from an ISO 17025 accredited test house and should not be older than 5 years as part of an initial review. Now, we did get asked if reports older than 5 years could be used as part of the recertification, and there's been no changes, and the state of the art has been maintained. Then yes, there are going to be certain reasons or certain situations where test data older than 5 years could be used, or if you're using similar components in a multitude of different products. But as I say, it's going to be a case-by-case basis, and we can have those discussions with the certification manager as to what those reasons would be. We'd also be looking for copies of the quality plan. As I say, we don't need the full sets of procedures and documents. That will be covered on the surveillance audits. But what we'll be looking at is details of the manufacturing processes, limits of acceptability and rejection criteria, and status of any QMS systems that are in place, whether they're to ISO 9001 or ISO 13485 or whatever is appropriate. So it's just basically outlining what the quality plan is that's making those products and placing them onto the marketplace. Okay, next slide, please. We'll also be looking for copies of the product marking that appears in there. So if you were to purchase this product over the counter or by an end user, what markings would appear on there? And there's a certain number of benchmark requirements there. And also copies of what the user instructions are going to look like. So what kind of information has been provided with the end product, so we can check that against the requirements of the standard. So as you can see within the technical file, there's nothing in there that's too much of a surprise, especially if you supply technical files to BSI for other product types for other different certification schemes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we do have a BSI customer portal. This is something that some of you may be familiar with if you've got current existing certifications within BSI, and it's a tool that allows clients to be able to download things such as test reports, assessment reports, certificates, anything that's basically been issued by BSI to you. They're all contained in one area and they're in one place whereby you can access them. So rather than you having to download things or scan them in and hold them onto your own drive, they can be held online in a secure format that only allows you access to have a look at those types of documents. Now, one of the things that we are looking to be doing is using the customer portal to allow you to supply things such as technical files with us. This is something that's going to be going ahead in the future, so we're not quite at that point yet, but the idea is that the customer portal will be a way by you can securely supplying us with test data or technical files in order for us to review and check those before we issue out any kind of certification. So if you are an existing BSI customer, you've probably got some experience with the customer portal, but we will be using that as a means for holding certificates. So rather than PDF copies being issued to you as by email, this allows you to download them. You'll get an instruction and you'll be able to download those certificates, and that will apply to also, as say, things like test reports and assessment reports going forwards. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that we are looking to do is change the way that pricing is being structured. So one of the price strategies, I suppose, that was being used under the old benchmark process was that you had all fees loaded up against one annual assessment. So you would have a fee of around about 5,000 Australian dollars every time a benchmark assessor went onto site, and that would then be effectively your fees for the year. We're changing the processes and the invoicing model to make it more like other schemes that we do operate. So that will be reflecting similar things such as kite marking and CE marking that you may be familiar with. So we're basically going to break this down into a new process which does contain some fixed costs and also some variable costs, depending on the amount of activity that we engage with you as manufacturers over the course of the year. So the fixed cost is that there's going to be some form of annual management fee that's going to be implemented. This is going to be to enable you to have the benchmark certification issued to you and to allow us to maintain that scheme. The other fixed cost that we're going to have is the assessment fees. So whenever an assessor goes onto your site and delivers some form of QMS assessment, that will be a chargeable fee. Now, the difference being with this is that the assessment fees are going to be vastly reduced from the current 5,000 Australian dollars that you would have been invoiced in the past. So with the annual management fee and the assessment fees, when they're combined, will give you a reduced fee annually, and that will be the fixed costs that you will be dealing with. Now, if you do go through a process whereby you're adding products or you're adding sites, these will be treated as individual projects and quoted for and charged on a project by project basis, and these effectively be the variable costs. So if during the course of the year you don't take part in any product updates or changes, then effectively you will have a variable cost of zero, and the only costs that you will be invoiced will be the fixed costs, which will be less than what you've been receiving before. The fixed costs for the annual license fee will be invoiced each April, and the assessment fees will be invoiced on a time when the assessment's undertaken. So, you know, there'll be part of that assessment process is to produce an invoice for that time being with the assessor taking place on site. So, as I say, we are making some changes to the way that we are carrying out the invoicing side, but as I say, it's a bit more aligned with the other schemes that we operate, as I say, whether they're kite mark or CE marking, so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. And as I say, with the assessment fees, we're looking to combine some of those assessments, so the module Ds or the kite marks that you're having taken place at one site, we can then start incorporating the benchmark with those on an ongoing basis. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so it's been quite a brain dump. I hope it's been informative. I hope the information that's been given over to you has been pretty clear and concise. You'll be getting a copy of the slides just for your own reference, and a recording of the presentation will be provided to you also. We're now going to leave ourselves, we've got just over 10 minutes open to any questions. So I think Martina's going to ask the question, and Holly's going to ask the question, and then between us we'll hopefully answer those and give you full clarity on the any questions that you may have.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Nathan. So the first question I'm going to leave with, I think it's a clarification really. Andrew's asked in the chat whether we're talking about head office or license holder, where the company is part of a group. I guess which one are we referring to?
Yeah. So I think Holly went a bit mute then. So yeah, the head office or license holder, where the company is part of a group. So what we're classing as the head office or license holder is the address that we're issuing the benchmark license to. So that would be the head office or the license holder. They're the organisation that's taking responsibility for that certification. If you're part of a group, then I think that's something that we'd have that conversation. I see this is come through from Andy, and I know the structure that you guys are operating, and we'll probably have that discussion as to where we'll be looking to visit as part of that head office. But as far as we're concerned, the head office or license holder is the address that's going to be on the benchmark license.
Thank you. So the next question we have is, when will the new benchmark certification process officially replace the old system, and what are the exact things for organisations to comply?
Okay, so the way we're trying to operate this going forwards is, and we realise that it's a big change. We've had, I mean, Holly was taking over this scheme prior to November, prior to me stepping in, and we've both been up. I mean, Holly was doing the sort of heavy lifting with early calls at 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning. I've been sort of handed that baton over, talking to a lot of the Australian clients that we have over there, because we appreciate that this is a change to the way things have been operating. The way that we're looking to do this going forwards is that we have a number of expirations coming ahead in 2026. So the way we're going to look at this is, if you've got a new application and that application is being signed at the moment, and we've got some that are going through our processes, those new applications will be following this new process. So if you've applied to get product certified, we would have been providing you with things like the application forms and the technical file checklists for you to follow this new process. If we haven't had any engagement with you so far because there's been no product changes or site changes, what we're going to do it is at the point of the expiration of that certificate. So in 2026, we're going to have 366 benchmark certificates expiring throughout the course of next year. What we're going to start doing is breaking that down into Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4, and reaching out to you the quarter before your license is due to expire, and providing you with a quotation and structure for this new process of both the technical files, the application forms, the assessments and the invoicing in the following quarter. So we're going to carry it out as a rolling process. I know we've only got literally a couple of weeks before the year end, but Krish and myself are talking to our sales to get the Q1 quotes sorted out, ready to happen before Christmas. So we'll be doing that in the next week or so. But the idea is that we go through this as a rolling process, and we start transitioning people to the new process upon the expiration of their existing benchmark certificate.
Brilliant.
So it's anything new and anything expires.
So another question we have is, under the new rules, will test data from in-house laboratories still be accepted, or must all test data now come from third-party accredited labs?
We've come to the conclusion that from an integrity perspective, we will accept ISO 17025, which is the accreditation standard for test laboratories and calibration laboratories, if the manufacturer holds an ISO 17025 laboratory themselves. So it's going to be following similar type of rules in other certification schemes, in that we're looking for an ISO 17025 accreditation. So if a manufacturer has their own lab, then yes, we would accept that. So that's going to differ for CE marking, because when we have conversations with our accreditation body for CE marking, RVA will not accept manufacturer's test data. So if you're looking at test data to cover both CE and benchmark, then it would have to be fully independent. But if the application is purely for benchmark, then we would accept manufacturer's test data. If there are some instances that we can't find an ISO 17025 accredited laboratory, which may be the case, as I say, in my world, with chemical, biological, nuclear and radiological data, sometimes we may struggle to find accredited data for that. In that case, we'd have that conversation up front, and we'll come up with provisions to cover the use of that data. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more. So for companies operating across multiple regions, will the new benchmark process allow for a single submission for global recognition, or will separate regional evaluations still be required?
We're trying to, for the evaluation side, have one assessment to cover all the different regions. We're cutting our teeth with this at the moment. We're in the learning steps. Some regions do have different requirements, so we're going to have to take those into account. And for the backlog of work, the pod that I'm kind of running at the moment is focusing on the benchmark side, but our utopian status is that if you have one application and you want to get kite mark, CE marking and benchmark, one review would be undertaken, and then we can issue all those certifications off the back of that one review. Certainly that's the goal that we're looking at incredibly short term from the assessment side, and we're working with our planning team to be able to deliver that. But yes, our long-term goal is one review and then taking into account all the local, national and regional requirements, multiple certifications off the back of it.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we have now that we've answered. If anyone has any more, please submit them to us and we will happily clarify any concerns that you might have.
Okay.
Thank you, Nathan and Holly. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Once you leave the webinar, you will receive a short survey on your experience today. We would be very grateful if you could take a few minutes to complete this with your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email with the next 48 hours with the link to the recording and slides. On behalf of BSI, thank you for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.